parts of the sword come to us from Buckeye Cast. Looking at it when it was together, that's a good looking blade. I like the leaf shape you got going on. The grind is a little lenticular, and so it retains a lot of weight that it doesn't necessarily need. If you were to do a little bit more of a flat grind on these and leave a medial ridge, you take a lot of the weight out without sacrificing any of the strength. The edge shows a possible deflection here from some of the striking, but the big gorilla in the room obviously is that it broke right at the tang intersection. It's a very small tang to have on a sword. You really want a big beefy tang, especially up here at this intersection, and what you have is something like a 1/4 of an inch round rod, and that's just not as strong as it should be. Also, it looks like you kind of relied a little bit on some JB Weld to save you, and that's not what JB Weld does. I mean, it's a strong epoxy, but it won't take this kind of stress. The handle that you have is round, and that's difficult to index a sword with a round handle. It would be better if there were some either flat spots or the whole thing was more oval. It helps in figuring out where the edge is when you pick up a sword and keeping it there. The round handles tend to turn in your hand as you're swinging them. Next sword you make, I would flatten some of the sides of the handle to make it more indexable, and certainly start with a much larger tang.
Beautiful, beautiful design work, inspiring, the runes, everything.
Yeah, I mean, you got some Viking ravens up in here and some goats. Gotta love the goats. The big issue I have with this hammer is on the first hit, there was a shard chipped off of the head here and hit me in the chest. I wasn't even swinging it. So, you know, that's a dangerous thing to have happen on a hammer, and you know, for that reason, I don't think that there was the perfect heat treat. I imagine it was a little bit too brittle, but the weight is beefy, you know, and it hits like a ton of bricks, and the overall look of it is really pretty. The casting looks flawless. So I think Texas A&M, you did a great job with this hammer. Just a little bit brittle on the old heat treat there.
This is from Baylor University George Washington carvers. So this is one of the ones that didn't pass the test very far, a traditional one that was, I believe, a gift to George Washington. And so one of the things that we loved about this was the uniqueness of the sword. However, the distance from the back to the cutting edge and the depth of these serrations, which were actually part of the sword, made us look at it and go, this is gonna break. It actually felt pretty good in the hand, but again, each of these little serrations is a stress riser. So if they had been maybe rounded to reduce that moment in there, or something along those lines. Now the traditional one actually had serrations left and right, which reduced that, which would probably be hard to see in a documentary or some photo of the piece. So that's why theirs lasted and this didn't. Wonderful sword. Sorry it didn't make it further. Gutsy lattice and skeletization happening here. Flawless casting.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous.
And obviously the flaw was, again, not accommodating a strong enough handle.
Yep.
And I think this one would have got a lot further myself. I mean, it's what, four or five different layers in the molding process, so really difficult there. But I think because of the lattice, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the weight on this was so much fun because it was so skeletonized. The casting looks really good. You know, I like that it's an as-cast finish, or maybe as-cast and a little sandblasting. Yeah, and you can kind of see it, but it's beautiful. And the big issue is, I mean, look at the size that you had to bring the handle down to in order to fit into the head. I mean, it should have been more like this size in a hammer this big and this heavy, because you know, we're not gentle people in general.
This is not what it's about.
Yeah. So you know, we loved it. We loved the design, and it really would have gone a lot higher in our review if it hadn't have broken.
Ohio State had a problem in their build, and their forks did not stay attached in their casting. But they came up with an interesting solution, a tennis racket handle on the end of it, and made what honestly, I would say is pretty much a good horseman's axe. There are a lot of good features on this, but as you can see, again, the casting cut loose in our testing. These tools have to take a beating and be ready to take a beating. So somewhere along the line in their casting process, something went wrong, whether it was the heat treat on this object or whether it was a crack. Again, 2 pieces, no more testing.
This has got a pretty good form from about this part up. However, the transition here, and obviously the transition to the handle, was not so good. It kind of failed quickly. On this plane, this is a pretty good representation. One of the things that from here down, longer necks, thinner necks, the transition here is pretty rough. I liked it. It performed well in some regards, but broke pretty easily, which is kind of a shame. Texas State Steel Bobcat, kind of bummer. We thought this was going to be one of the last 10 or 12. Some of your decorative features is wonderful. The cross section of the forks is a little bit beefy, but not as much as others. The distance gap between here, 1 1/8, is probably, I think, what has been determined to be optimal. So this was a little narrow and wouldn't function to get behind a lock and pop it off. We didn't really focus on that because we really liked this bar. There's so much about it, but obviously the real sadness is the failure of the metallurgy.